What they won't tell you, we will. Come and Take It News.
Welcome to the Come and Take It News podcast. I'm your host, Clint Milby. YOSHI is a conservative freedom fighter and volunteer in Southern California. In 2020, he hosted and co-hosted mandate protest and recall Newsom rallies to help gather signatures. Today, he continues to volunteer where he can while helping to spread truth and information on social media. You were involved in some protests in regards to Gavin Newsom, the recall effort, as well as to repeal the mandates. Can you talk a little bit about like how you got, was this the first time you ever engaged in like doing protests and stuff like that?
Yeah, this was, I've always grown up, I was born and raised as a conservative. That's just how my family is. So fortunately I was blessed with that. My parents, they got involved with the Tea Party way back when, but I was too young to even, well, not too young, but I was not 18 at the time when they were doing all that. So I didn't really get involved in any of that back then. But then the lockdowns came around in 2020 and I thought it was just, the same Ebola, swine flu, H1N1, just all these, another one of these things. And this time we're going to lock down. So I'm like, all right, whatever. We're on a lockdown for 2 weeks. It's stupid, but whatever, we're going to do it. And then the 2 weeks went by, and then that's when I realized, okay, they're not going to end this anytime soon. This is here to stay. And once it clicked for me, that's when I got angry and decided to get involved any way I could. What I ended up doing was getting on Facebook and looking for different anti-lockdown groups, different groups that were protesting. And I just found one after the other and just started going to more and more rallies, trying to help people that were organizing them. Just like I have sound equipment, for example. So, microphones, all that stuff, I would offer it to them for free and just like, hey, if you guys need it, let's go, let's do it. So I helped a lot with that. And then just started doing my own thing after a while. Just started doing my own protests, organizing stuff, especially for the recall Newsom thing. That was a big one for me because, I'm sure like everybody else, they all hate him just as much as I do. So I was trying to help as much as I can to get as many signatures as possible. And then, it's kind of from there into one opportunity to another. I worked with Lexit for a little bit there. Afterwards, I was their chapter leader in Orange County. It's just kind of led from one thing to another, basically.
Let's address this. So you live in LA County or you live in Orange County?
I'm actually Riverside County now, but I was from Orange County.
So there's kind of a large conservative faction in Orange County. Is that right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so your parents, you were mentioning they're part of the Tea Party movement. Did you ever go to any rallies or anything like that with them? I know you said you were younger, but did you attend or anything like that?
No, I can think of maybe one time where I maybe was in the car with them, but I vaguely remember. It was such a long time. I don't think I was that young or anything. I was probably like 15, something like that. I don't know I can't remember how old I was, but no, I didn't go to any Tea Party protests back then. My dad actually did the same thing I was doing. He offered the sound equipment to all those organizers as well. And that's how he got involved.
So when you say you offered sound equipment, does that mean you do like public events for like vocation work? Is that your job or?
Well, I used to, when I was 15, my dad and I started a little DJ business doing like weddings, backyard parties, charities, all kinds of different things. So we just have all this equipment over the years. And so we figured we have it, might as well use it,
So what was it? The lockdowns came in March of 2020. Mm-hmm. I was here in Los Angeles, and what was it about that hit you like, this is not correct, this is not right?
That's a good question. I would say probably just the way they were spinning things and trying to exaggerate it as bad as it was. It was, oh my gosh, everybody's going to die kind of thing. And that to me already was just like, okay, that's not happening. This is just nonsense. That, and then I remember even Dr. Drew and Dr. Oz in the first week or two of the whole pandemic, where they first came out and said, oh yeah, Z-Pack and hydrochloroquine, they were calling it out in the very, very beginning. And I remember that Dr. Oz, they both got silenced real quick, shunned out of the media. People were even saying they weren't even real doctors and all that kind of stuff. So when I saw all of that happening, I was like, okay, there's a lot more going on here. They're trying to control the narrative, and that's when my ears started to prick up a little more.
So I think it was like I said, it was March 15th here. They came, and then they, it just started like every day there was all these updates from the mayor and from the county board of supervisors here in LA. Initially, did you think that something was happening? Did you think that, wow, this is like a big deal, or were you kind of like, this doesn't sound legit at all?
I mean, I think I had that initial reaction of like, the world's actually locking down, so people are taking this seriously, compared to all the other fake viruses that they had released previously. But then I just kept thinking back to all those previous viruses, how they were just, nothing came out of them. Like I said, H1N1, nothing came out of that. Swine flu, nothing came out of that. So I just kept thinking in my head, it's just got to be another one of these things, and we'll get out of it in 2 weeks. Hopefully people will snap out of it, kind of thing. That was my initial thought. So what were the kind of the first things? I know some of the folks, and to be honest with you, I mean, I was all in regards to like when the announcements came and when the lockdown started. I took it like incredibly seriously. I thought for sure, there's something here, and out of just, caution, I was like, I'm going to take this seriously. But I started seeing folks like saying like, this is ridiculous. Why would they lock down the beaches? Why would they lock down like skate parks? Why would they lock down like all of these other places if, fresh air is something that you need to be able to survive, and that's a good way to like beat the virus. What were the things that you saw that were just like, something's not right here? Yeah, I mean, all the rest too, just for people speaking out again. Well, not speaking out, but going to the beaches. I remember watching it on Facebook one time. Some people went out onto the beach. This was in San Diego, I think it was. And some dude just walked out into the sand, and all these cops surrounded him, and all arrested this dude, took him to the paddy wagon and all that. So, I mean, you kept seeing different things like that happening, the censorship. And so at that point, I'd never seen that happen before. In a free country, supposedly free country, where we're supposed to be able to do whatever we want to do. And even during those lockdowns, when everyone really did stay home for those first 2 weeks, I drove around. If I had to go to the grocery store, I went to the grocery store. If I had to go to my parents' house, I went to my parents' house. I went to wherever I had to go. I didn't stop, which was great because the freeways were wide open. It was like nobody on the freeway whatsoever. But to me, I just couldn't buy it. And I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but it was just the way they were trying to control the narrative, silencing people, arresting people for doing simple things, like you said, just going out to breathe some air. I mean, when there was at one point in Riverside County where they were going to issue out $1,000 fine if you weren't wearing a mask outside. And right. Thank God, Sheriff Chad Bianco, he totally rejected that idea. But I mean, I was like, what? For not wearing a mask? I can walk outside my front door and I could possibly get $1,000 fine. Like, okay, this is just absurd at this point. So you just keep seeing more of those things along the way, of rules that just make no sense. That I'm not a scientist, but I could tell that wasn't science, So yeah, you just keep seeing that over and over. And to me, it was just one red flag after another, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things for me was like, and I live here in Burbank, is that our city council, and we have our own police department, our own mayor. Our city council had hired a company. I forget the name of the company. It was like Airmark or one of these companies. It wasn't necessarily a security firm, but they were empowering them to write tickets to anybody that they saw without a mask, like on biking trails and on a sidewalk or wherever. And it was for them. I remember it was like a $500 fine. And we found out that, law enforcement had you would never going to appear before a judge, but if you didn't pay it, then they would just hit your credit report saying that you have defaulted on a bill or something like that. So I knew then that there was some sort of, it just didn't make sense. And they spent like $500,000 on these people. So it was. And they did it twice. They renewed their contract. The next year. It's just.
I didn't even know they did that.
Crazy.
That's new to me.
Yeah, and then and they've never been held to account for it either. You know, I think the majority of people just wanted to they were so grateful to get on with their lives. They didn't want, or they didn't spend time on addressing the people that were putting us in this position to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the biggest problem of the whole thing is we kind of put the chains on ourselves as an entire nation, because nobody had to listen to any of these mandates. I mean, I remember the day that Newsom came out with the mandate, and he said that this is going to be a stay-at-home order. And I immediately Googled that, because I'm like, there's no such thing as a stay-at-home order. That's a made-up term. And he used that term to just psychologically freak everybody out into thinking that what he was saying was legit. And I remember him even saying that he can't enforce it. I remember him saying that very clearly, that he can't enforce it, but he'll depend on the social contract that we have with each other. So he basically just told us, yeah, you guys are going to lock yourselves down, essentially. And that's what happened. We all fell for it in that sense.
Well, one of the things that I heard someone say recently is that what's been weaponized in this whole thing is human compassion.
Yes.
That you don't want to hurt your neighbor. You don't want to kill an old person. You don't want to, you might be fine. You might not get the virus, but you could do somebody that's like infirmed, or somebody that's compromised medically or something like that. And of course, the average person doesn't want to hurt anybody. They don't want to be the cause of causing harm to somebody. That's your average individual. So we adhere to all this stuff that didn't actually make any like medical sense at all.
Right. Yeah, it's all about emotion at that point. And that's one thing that the Democrats are really good at doing, is playing on people's emotions so that they can achieve their ends. But, that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think that's exactly what they do.
So when you started looking out and started reaching out to people, were you said you went to like Facebook and you were looking at groups that were anti-lockdown, anti-vax, patriot groups, things like this?
Yeah, I connected with some people in Ventura County, of all places. I mean, I was from Riverside, but I saw that there was a big protest movement going on out there in the very beginning. So I started getting involved out there. Can't remember the exact name of the group. I can't think of it. It was like, it's crazy how long ago all of this was. It still feels like it was yesterday. Yeah, it just got stuck in Ventura, and then just connected from one group to another after that, finding out different protests and different rallies and networking in that sense to find out what else is going on. Because at that point, I just wanted to get involved. I just wanted to do something, because the last thing I wanted to do is just sit there and just watch it happen. I just couldn't do that. And even back then, I figured, even if they never let us open up, even if they never give us our freedom back, we just got to speak up, just for the sake of speaking up, just to let people know that, hey, we're not just going to be silent about this. We're not just going to take it. We're going to do something about this. So I was out there almost every weekend. I feel like that was my life for a year and a half, 2 years almost. It was just rallies and trying to hype up as many people as I can to get excited as well. That's kind of what I focus on now, really, with my page. Is, I share a lot of information, but my goal is just to get everybody excited, because there's a lot of doomers out there that don't think anything's going to happen, and we're all just, out of luck and all that stuff. But, I just want to keep people excited about fighting for their country,
When you say that, what do they call it? Black-pilled, someone that is just thinks that we're lost, essentially, and that this is all like kind of a lost cause, or it has to run its course or whatever. When you talk about optimism, what keeps you optimistic? What specifically?
What keeps me optimistic? That's a good question. I mean, I just have faith that this country is not going to go down the drain like this. With everything this country has been through from the very get-go, from the Puritans and the Pilgrims coming across the Atlantic Ocean, those people all went through impossible odds in situations where they probably knew they weren't going to win. I mean, I can only imagine what it was like being a colonial soldier back in the day. Think you're going to go up against some British regulars and take them down. Like, they probably knew they weren't going to win, but they just went to do it anyways, because they figured we're not going to take this. So for me, the optimism, it just comes from a gut belief that, our bloodline comes from people that win. We have a strong history of winning by just never giving up. And that's, I don't know, that's kind of what I rely on, I guess. But at the same time, like I said, I'm just not the type of person to just go down without a fight. I'm going to go down swinging. If I'm going to go down, then you're going to go down with me, kind of thing.
So they loosened up on the mandates in regards to the lockdown. They started letting people out. Of course, that was in regards to George Floyd. And I think for me, that was really my lightning point, where it was just like, I saw a million people like walking all on top of each other down Hollywood Boulevard. And we were told to like stay in our houses this entire time. And then all of a sudden, and their excuse was like, oh, well, we can't infringe upon free speech. It was just like, well, free speech didn't take a vacation like the last 3 months. It was always there, but you told people they couldn't go to church. They couldn't gather for holidays or birthdays or all this type of thing. We were supposed to hide away from each other, stay in closed doors. And then all of a sudden they just opened the doors up. And then, of course, Garcetti essentially inviting people, and Gavin Newsom inviting people from out of state. We were talking about Antifa people and stuff like that to come down to LA to tear shit up, essentially. And it's like, I was just like, why on earth would you tell these maniacs that have been burning like the Northeast or the Northwest this entire time? Why would you invite them into the city? I would tell them not to come here. And for me, that was just like,
yeah.
This is insane. I was like, we're living in an insane world. What was your impression of all that stuff that was going on? Because it was just like, it was so contrast. It was like all of a sudden, from being told to stay inside, now it's okay to just go and start burning police cars and smashing windows.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, it was definitely not about the science, right off the get-go. But, at that time, I was still going to rallies every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever day they had a protest. But my impression of the whole George Floyd thing was it really sapped the energy out of the anti-lockdown movement, the anti-mandate movement. I remember people that I was organizing protests with even decided, yay, let's take a break for a couple of weeks until we figure out what's going on with George Floyd, because they were worried about BLM coming out to riot and Antifa coming out to riot. So, I mean, there was a pause there for a couple of weeks of no protests from our side until that whole George Floyd thing had smoothed over. And that's because people just, they don't want to get in fights. And that's understandable. We've never been put in that kind of situation as a community. So I think what ended up happening with all that, the reason why all that happened was because the anti-lockdown movement was gaining such momentum during those first few months. And I think they had to throw the whole BLM thing at us to just shut it down, because that's what ended up happening. It was no longer about, obviously it was about the COVID, it was about the virus, but the whole conversation now was about not just about COVID, but now it was about George Floyd. And now we have this whole debacle over here that people are talking about that's filling up the news hours, filling up TV screens and all of that. And now we're not focused on the mandates anymore in the lockdown protests. So now we were kind of fighting for attention, anti-lockdown protests versus BLM protests. And of course they had the narrative on their side, so they kept pushing that. But I honestly believe that one of the main reasons for all that was to shut us down, to keep our movement from growing the way it did, and just completely change the narrative. And then, of course, obviously, the steal the presidency from Trump and rig the whole election. But my gut feeling when it happened was that they were trying to get rid of us, our anti-lockdown people.
I never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense, though, because it did. Because and beyond that, it was like, if you were participating in the anti-lockdown stuff, then after George Floyd, you were a racist. They were able to label everybody that was involved in that as bigots and racist. Did you notice that as well?
Oh yeah. I had one dude impersonate my Facebook account one time, and he made my page go viral on the BLM side, not on the Patriot side of all people. But what he would end up doing was he made a fake profile and used my picture and my name and everything and started posting the most racist things. And it was so absurd that even their side didn't believe it. That's how bad it was. Talking about like lynching and like it. I don't even want to repeat some of the stuff because it's just messed up. But I mean, yeah, not only labeled as a racist, but impersonated as a racist. At that time, I was doing a lot of stuff in Ventura, so the community out there started getting wind about this racist, this guy over here. It even went all the way up to the mayor of Port Hueneme, I think the name is the city. I like had some people send an email to her saying it just blew up way out of proportion. Fortunately, though, the guy who was impersonating me was an idiot because he he gave himself up way too easily. What he ended up doing was like he would take screenshots of like, oh look, this is what that guy posted. But the screenshots were within just a minute of the post going up. So it's like, okay, well clearly this is the guy who's taking clear. So long story short, we got him arrested. I don't know where he's at now. This was a long time ago, but yeah.
What was he arrested for?
Impersonating. I don't remember the exact charges, but basically impersonating, stealing identity.
Identity theft, fraud, something like that.
Yeah, along those lines, because he was just using my name and putting it out there. And it wasn't just me. It was this lady named Gina Bacon at the time. She was somebody that was working with, but he did it to her as well. You could actually find her story in the news and, type that in Google. I won't be on there because I didn't get involved with all that. I just assisted with the detectives finding this guy. But yeah, it was a whole debacle. These people are crazy. BLM even came after me because I had found it's a long story, but I found a dossier, a Google link dossier, and I still have it up on my YouTube. But it's this huge, long, just document that the BLM side was pushing around on Instagram. This was like their way of communicating to all of their little protesters. And what this dossier was basically this propaganda booklet, if you will, that would get people engaged into their movement. So like the first section of it was something about, these are all the different police brutality cases, and these are all the different stories. And there's 100 different, like hundreds of different stories, and you just click on the link, it takes you to a story. And then the next section was, this is where you can donate to these people and donate to help that cause and that cause. And the next section was, you can petition for this civil right action and this civil right action and petition. And then finally, as you work your way down through the dossier, it starts getting into how to riot.
Violent action.
Yeah. And so there was even one section in there where it talked about how to disable a tank. Like these people actually thought that Trump was going to send in the military to stop them. And stop these riots with actual tanks. So there was a section in there where it says, it was something like, there's this recipe of certain liquids that if you put together, it might accidentally blind the tank or blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so these people are like really trying to go for some kind of, what do you call it, urban warfare kind of thing. But anyways, long story short, I posted this video called BLM Terrorist Group. BLM found the video. And then they found out where it worked. And I remember the next morning, I go to work and my manager calls me into the office. And he said, hey, so there's these girls calling the office. They keep calling the corporate office and they keep saying that you're a racist and this and that. And then he pulled out his phone and he showed me my profile, my Facebook profile. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. I don't know if you've seen that meme where Kermit the Frog is like in an interview and he's handing his new employer, the job, like his phone with all the conspiracy stuff on his phone. Like they literally happened to me. So fortunately, my boss was a conservative, thank God. Because he's like, I do agree with everything you're saying, but I can't have you put your name on this stuff with our company name on it. So all you gotta do is change your name. And he let me keep posting whatever, no repercussions. But yeah, they came after me for stupid stuff like that. But they're unhinged. That's just who they are,
They're unhinged, but they're, as you say, that document had like, it was crazy organized in regards to like all of the things there. And then I heard there was I saw this, some Antifa woman was busted recently. I forget what her name was or whatever. But there was an interview with her where she was talking about that they had received information, manuals from U.S. Army Ranger manuals on how to do guerrilla warfare tactics and things like this. Wow. Not that the Army had given them that, but somebody had absconded with it and then given it to them. And they were actually practicing guerrilla warfare tactics that the United States military have been using for the last like 20 years or something like that. And that's the thing about it, is like it's a run-in joke that they've declared concerned parents and things like this have become like domestic terrorists, but yet you had legit domestic terrorists. I mean, can you imagine if a Patriot group, if someone found a document that showed like that they were planning on making like homemade bombs and stuff like that, what action they would take? And yet still the action that's taken against Antifa and BLM it's small, very small.
I mean, you look at what happened to those guys in Michigan that got arrested for trying to kidnap, apparently, allegedly trying to kidnap Governor Whitmer. I mean, they jumped on them like white on rice and arrested all those guys, even though they're the ones that started it. The feds did, you know? But I remember talking to some of my other like co-organizers at the time, when I shared with them that BLM dossier. I'm like, dude, we're not even this organized. And we like do this every single weekend. We communicate every day. We couldn't even compete with the level of organization that they had. You know, we're talking like, I don't have a good comparison, but it was just very extensive to what they did. And so you can tell that it wasn't just BLM putting this together. I wouldn't even say it was just Soros. It was a whole group of people, a whole conglomerate that put this whole thing together for BLM to go out there and do what they did. Everything was precise, you can say, just very, very, very well thought out on their side of things. I don't think we were ready for that. To be honest, I mean, none of us were. We didn't see any of this coming for the last couple of years until it happened. But yeah, these people, in that sense, they're scary that they're that organized, because my thing is, I don't know what these next 2 years are going to imply, because if we know anything from the last 2 years, as far as what they're willing to do to stop Trump, I feel like at this point now they're backed in a corner with everything happening, with the Twitter files being released, with the Mar-a-Lago raid being exposing the CIA of all people, not Trump. You know, all these different things happening. I feel like they're getting backed into a corner where we may see another summer of love, if you will, over these next years. I am kind of worried about that, because I know they're not going to go down without a fight. That's kind of one of my biggest concerns.
Talking a little bit about organization, talking a little bit about like, one of the things that I have to be honest with you, I didn't start going to protests. My very first one during this time was September of 2021, to be honest with you. That was the first time that I actually went on the street with the bullhorn on Ventura Boulevard, and there was Antifa on one side and then the Patriots on the other side of Ventura Boulevard near Sherman Oaks. And that was kind of the first time where I was actually in the mix with all of this stuff. So I missed a lot of like some of the larger things that took place for WeSpa and other different ones. But over the last over the last year, one of the things I've noticed is that our attendance and our ability to draw protesters is waning. And I don't know if that has to do with I mean, there's a lot of factors, people being shadow banned and not being able to communicate. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, no finance. I mean, no one's got any money. So this is just like whatever you're going to do, whatever you have. There's no like budget for marketing or any of the other stuff that it seems like that Antifa seems to have, or organization in regards to like bailing people out of jail and law and legal help and stuff like that. But it just seems like it's waning. And I don't know if that's because a lot of people are leaving California, because they're leaving in droves. Everybody that's got a brain seems to be like headed out of town. What I mean by anybody with a brain, I mean anybody that has critical thought to see like what's taking place here. What do you think that we need to do to bring the numbers back? Because it seems like still people are starting to wake up more and more. You know, how do we activate these people?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've organized quite a few different rallies. The biggest factor I would say is that people have to be angry enough, is where it comes down to. If it doesn't bother you, then you're not going to really do anything about it. And yeah, we're all bothered by everything that's going on right now, but are you really angry? Are you really mad? Are you mad enough to get out there and stand on the street corner by yourself with a sign that, you know, speaks out for freedom, speaks out for babies? Are you that mad? because if you're not, then I don't think we're going to get those people out there. And I think we're going to get to that point as things start getting closer to the election. We definitely had a reason to get out there over the last 2 years with the lockdowns. I mean, that really pissed off a lot of people, because now you're messing with people's money at that point. And anytime you mess with people's money, being able to work, being able to do all that, that's when people really start to get angry. So I think the Democrats have done a good job as far as keeping us somewhat cooled off a little bit. It was great that the lockdowns stopped, that we got all that taken care of. But I think the moment that they start to bring that up again, people are going to be out there in droves. To get people back out now, I don't know if there's any one particular thing that we can do to get more people out there. For me, like I said, I try to get people hyped up as much as I can. I share news as much as I can, maybe to spark that little fire in them to get them out there. I think, though, as we get close to the election, people will start to come out. I mean, I've actually talked to a couple different people about organizing rallies already. Some people are already talking about doing stuff as soon as the holidays are over, starting Trump rallies and stuff. That stuff needs to happen soon, definitely sooner than later. But I think once the organizers start getting together again and start communicating, all the same people who organize like the Beverly Hills rallies and Huntington Beach rallies, all that stuff, once those people start getting more, start talking again, start spreading the word, I think people are definitely going to come out. It's just a matter of time, I think, is all it is.
That's the thing. And I think you hit the point, is like when it starts hitting people where they live, that's when they're ready to say something. But it just seems like boy, I'll tell you what, this is a textbook case example of the frog in the pot, where it's just people's level of endurance for all of this nonsense and this oppression essentially is what we're dealing with. Has their tolerance level for it is like extremely high right now. So, but I don't know if, they have been trying to bring back a mask mandate in LA County. I think the pushback on that has been so strong, or not necessarily the pushback, but people's just essentially like, we're not going to comply with that. You don't see there's a few people out there with masks on, but not everybody is masking up like they had in the past, just based on the suggestion of it. And I think based on that, they're probably like, we don't want to make a mandate if no one's going to agree with it, because it makes us look weak. So we can't like build this into law. What do you think about what's happening, or what's happening moving forward? Because it seems to be that their plan is to bring us into another lockdown.
Yeah, I think they definitely, like you said, they don't want to anger too many people too quickly again and go through that whole thing of protests. I don't think they want to deal with that again. So I think the protests were successful in that sense, and being able to stop all that and make them think twice, because if they wanted to roll out another mandate, they probably wouldn't even hesitate. And they wouldn't have to come up for a reason for it either. That makes sense. They would just be like, all right, mask mandate, everybody mask up. But I think they even see the pushback that will happen. Kind of like you said, they see it. They're driving around in Los Angeles every day too. They see how many people are wearing masks. So, they have that little bit of a pulse on the community as well. But I think the minute that they actually do it, people are going to be out there for sure. I wouldn't doubt that for a second. If they started doing mask mandates, I'll start organizing rallies myself. I think definitely people will get out there. So I don't know, it kind of makes me think that it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about they must have something up their sleeves over these next 2 years, because there's no way that they're just going to let us rally for Trump without hindrance. And they know the Trump rallies are coming. They know that's coming. People were out there driving their cars by the thousands all over the freeways, all over Southern California. I remember when Trump came to Newport Beach that one time, and all those thousands of patriots showed up within 24 hours notice. And then that whole day, I hung out there that whole day afterwards. You saw Trump cars flying around, driving around all over the city. Not even at the event anymore. They were just driving around because there were just so many people there.
They were hyped.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that they don't want to fire us up right now. I think they're strategizing in a sense, probably waiting for their next move. Like I said, I'm expecting them to do some kind of weird false flag or weird George Floyd-esque type situation again next year. They know that they've awakened a beast in that sense.
Going back to one of the biggest pushes, I think one of the biggest, I consider it a success in the sense that we saw how many people were disenfranchised in California was the Governor Gavin Newsom recall because of the amount of signatures that were gathered. And of course, he dismissed it as being, fake, but they were verified. Mm-hmm. And the amount of people that they may not be political, but they know BS like when they see it. And they knew that there was something completely wrong with what was going on from the governor. So they expressed it by putting their signature there. To me, it was a success, like I said, in that sense. But a lot of people, self included, when I saw that, it was just like all these people during that election, they voted for him, and it was just like, how is that even possible? And to me, it just cemented that the elections in California are fabrications. I don't believe any of them.
No, I think California is the home of the fraud at the end of the day. This is where their base of operations is. This is where, actually, I should say, this is where they perfected the fraud to a T. I mean, the Democrats rule this state as far as, who's in the, what do you call it, Congress, Senate, and all of that. It's all Democrats at this point. But the, what was I going to say? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
About the fraud, about the
right.
Gavin Newsom fraud.
So, I mean, they perfected the fraud here. And I don't know if you follow Mark Moiser, attorney Mark Moiser.
That name sounds familiar, yeah.
He's somebody that I heard of over the last 2 years. But he was an attorney. I can't remember how long he's been an attorney, but it's been out for a while. But he has been exposing the California fraud for years, even before the whole 2020 pandemic and all that. And I watched some of his videos. And one video I saw him, he was talking to a election worker, poll worker. And he interviewed her, and she apparently had gone through these ballots. And one of the things that she had noticed was that there was several ballots coming from one particular address. And so she did a little bit more digging into it. And then bottom line is they came to the conclusion that the Democrat Party had basically property scattered throughout Southern California where they would literally just mail the ballots to, and then, Democrats just go pick them up. But these are empty houses. And from what he said, I mean, I have to verify this, of course, but from what he said, he's an attorney, these were homes purchased by the Democrat Party, property that they just flat out owned. And so you'd see all these different names coming out of the, all these different ballots coming out of that same address. It's like, okay, well, how many other houses are they doing this to? How many other ways are they doing this to? So, I mean, that, and then just being able to harvest ballots here legally, that to me just cemented the fraud here. Now, I don't want to discourage people by saying don't vote, because I still voted. I went out there, and here's the statistics. This is the sad part about California, and I don't know if you know this either, but in the last 2 years, the amount of registered Democrats went up from, I believe, 43 to 46%, or 40 to 43%. Either way, it's a 3% increase. But the Republican Party shrunk from about 20 something to 22%. So they decreased by 3% as well. So, I mean, you look at that alone, and even without the fraud and all of us voting all at once, we're still outnumbered 2-1 by the Democrats. I don't know how much of that's actually fraudulent registered voters. Of that 46% that they have, I mean, how many of them are dead? How many of them were actually legal immigrants? All that kind of stuff. But we still have to vote because, I mean, like we're seeing in Carrie Lake's situation, the only reason why she has a case is because people went out and voted. So I don't know if we'll ever get to that point here in California, but the only way to keep doing it is by trying, because as Mark Moiser actually said it, the voter fraud is complete when you stop voting, because what's the point of even cheating if nobody's going to vote? It's already rigged. So regardless, we still have to get out there, because at some point, something has to change. I don't know who or what is going to do it, but if we all just give up, it's never going to happen. So it's just something that we all got to keep plugging away at.
Well, to me, I think the one thing that the signatures did, it put Gavin Newsom on notice. He knows that, and the Democrats also know his party and his whoever's pulling his strings, because he's not doing all this on his own. They were put on notice that we see you, that the majority of California sees you. So at least they know for a fact they're not getting away with anything anymore. People have eyes to see like what's going on now. So it's like that's the one thing, and it makes them come out even stronger whenever they're doing something that's fraudulent. But I think you're right. I think that, you know, people just like get to the point where they become apathetic and they're like, what difference does it make if I vote or not? It never goes my way. It never goes, nothing ever happens the way that I want it to. And you know, it's a powerful scheme is what it is. And people are going to have to steel their minds against it and continue to come out in droves to vote these people out. It, like you said, with Carrie Lake, at least we have she has an argument, because so many people continually went out. Had those people not shown up at those Republican areas where they were denied entrance because their machines were down or whatever, I'm talking about what happened in Arizona. Had those people not come out at all, then that never would have like made the light of day. No one would have ever seen that, but it was because there was so many Republicans that are out there standing in line, waiting in line, that the issue came to light. Otherwise, we never would have even known that that was actually taking place.
Exactly. And if you're going to stay here in California, or if you're not able to move out of California, then I feel like you have an obligation to fight for it. You know, it's if you know about something and you don't do something about it, then you're just as guilty as the other party, you know what I mean, as for committing whatever crime that is. So, I mean, if you're here and you're not going anywhere, forget about what the odds are. This is your home. So you're either going to fight for it or you're not. And if you're not, then, you know, get out of the way. But let the rest of us try to fight for this country as much as we can. But I grew up watching Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant as like my role models. And I used to listen to, you know, talk about failure and mistakes and all that. And one of my favorite Michael Jordan commercials is where he talks about that. He's like, I failed over and over and over in my life. Or maybe that was Kobe. One of the two. I failed over and over and over in my life, and that is why I succeed. So it doesn't matter whether we win or lose even at this point. It's just a matter of principle even. Kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, just for the sake of our heritage, of who we are as Americans, you know, this is a disgrace to all the people who've fought for this country, for us to just sit there because, oh, well, our vote doesn't count. Like, what is that? You know what I mean? We're Americans at the end of the day. We go down swinging regardless of, I mean, remember the Alamo, you know what I mean? Till the last man.
And that's the thing you have to realize is that I saw an interview with Ted Bundy, the serial killer. And this was one of the last interviews that he had given before he was executed. And he was talking about it in the third person, because I think he thought he still had appeals or something like that. But he talked about like how he would play with his victims before he killed them, that he would choke them to the point of death and then let them go. And then let them like breathe and everything like that, and tell them, oh, I'm going to let you go. Everything's going to be okay. And then he would do it again, and he would take them, and this would go on for hours, he said. Wow. And I think that is exactly like what they're doing to us right now, is that, you know, they're squeezing us to the point of breaking. Then they let off and say, okay, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be lovely. You know, we're going back to normal. It's all good. And then they come back again, and this time they come harder. And it's just like they're operating off of a psychopathic mindset, it seems like. And so if we just lay down and let them continue to do this, then we'll perish. There's no other end to it. They don't have our best interest at heart. That's for sure.
I think a lot of the stuff that they do is just to demoralize us. I mean, when they keep coming after crazy bill after crazy bill after crazy bill, you know, we think that we crushed one bill, for example, and then all of a sudden this other bill comes up out of nowhere that just passed and nobody was even paying attention to. I think they do all that kind of stuff to discourage us, to mess with us. Things like hiring Sam Brinton as the energy, whatever he was, in the White House. There was no strategy.
The guy from the nuclear, talking about the nuclear waste guy. Yeah.
The guy just got arrested, right? But
Yeah.
I think they pick people like that, and they put people like that in place just completely to mock us. Like even having
Troll us. It's a troll.
that's all it is. Having Zelensky come to the White House today, even there was no point in that other than just to rub it in our faces and have him speak on the House floor of all things, and take the mic like that. There was no strategy behind that other than just rubbing it in our faces, I think. And they may be having a pizza party, hot dog party afterwards, but to me, it's just all about optics, where they're just trying to discourage us and make us not want to fight anymore. It's like, oh well, look at all these guys are all in charge. What are we going to do? And they just keep throwing that at us, and it is to demoralize us because I think of them as like this unrelenting animal that just it's like rabbit. It just keeps coming at you, and it's not going to stop. And and that's kind of why I think that conservatives can't compromise ever on anything. Like I know there's some Larry Elder fans out there, and that's fine. But when he was running for governor, he had said that that Biden won the election fair and square, and that there were shenanigans. And then the bigger thing was that he was okay with transgender men going in women's bathrooms in an interview that he had done. And I was like, all right, that's a complete no for me on this guy. But the thing about that was that conservatives were willing to come to the middle ground for a conservative candidate like that, just so that the left would also vote for him. But I'm like, we can't think like that anymore, because these guys aren't like that either. The Democrats, like I said, they're this unrelenting beast, this animal that's just going to come at you. And the moment that you give them a little bit of ground, they're going to take a mile. It's one of those kind of situations. So, that's partially why I do what I do, to try to keep people's heads up. Whenever somebody comes on my page saying, "Oh, nothing's ever going to happen," first of all, I make fun of them, because I personally don't have time for that. And nobody else does either. We don't have time for people like that, because that's a cancer. More people that keep discouraging other people, it just weakens the movement. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, the way they ruled their teammates hated them.
Yep.
For the things that they said.
That's absolutely true.
So I'm like, we're all about winning here in America for this country. And when it comes to our freedom, we can't play around. We can't compromise with any of that. We have to be coming at it just as hard as they are.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that about Kobe Bryant, but I heard that about Michael Jordan. That people said he was an asshole. That's the way they described him, and that's it. If you're going to be about winning, if you're going to be about perfection, you're going to make a lot of enemies, probably, because not everybody is going to be on that level, and it calls out their shortcomings. So you're not going to be well liked, and that's a tough thing. We've been taught to try to be somebody that is congenial and to be well liked, and at this stage of the game, especially. That's kind of out the window. You either get with the program or you don't. And that's kind of like where we're at. And they brought up another thing I wanted to talk to you about. I have a friend who is a delegate to the Republican Party. And I've been here, my suspicion with talking with Patriot candidates that ran in the last election was that it doesn't seem like, what we could see was that the Republican Party of California was not endorsing, or the LA GOP was not endorsing Patriot candidates. They were endorsing candidates that we had never heard of or had a track record of not being able to win. And the consensus about the last meeting of the LA GOP is that it was in disarray, and there was no real organization. And as a matter of fact, that the LA GOP is in the hole, like something like I think $10,000 or something like that. That they don't even have the ability to raise money, which everybody thinks the Republicans are rich. And in LA County, one of the richest counties in the United States, why are they so broke? What's going on? And it seems to me, it's a theory of mine, that the California and the California Republicans, the California GOP, seems to be throwing elections because they don't seem, it's beyond incompetence at this point. It seems that they don't have a winning strategy, and it seems like that for a reason. And I don't know if it's they're being paid by the Democrats to throw elections, or how this is actually working. or even if there's somebody higher up within the national Republican Party, because Trump has always had to fight against the rhinos, and they're embedded in like ticks inside the Republican Party. I mean, they could possibly be the ones that are really the button pushers that are running the show. That's the thing. We can fight the Democrats all day long because we know who they are, we know what they're about, and we know what they're going to do. But if our own party is against us, what do we do to counteract that? I mean, we've got to clean house. That's the only way I see it.
Yeah, we got to start with the local levels for sure. So, I mean, definitely props to some of those patriots out there in the local areas that ran for office and won. Some of them, you know, that's what we really need to start working on this. Going for the higher offices, yeah, we got to do that too. But you are going against the machine at that point. So I feel like we got to infiltrate a little bit, as much as we can, I should say, at a time. But yeah, I mean, the GOP here in California, I mean, this is just a hypothetical number, but I'd say that, you know, good 70, 80% of them are rhinos. I posted this video a while back from an article from the Gateway Pundit where a Zoom call was being recorded between the GOP members. They were talking about the GOP convention and setting up, what do you call it? The COVID pass, the vaccine pass. And they were having everyone who was going to attend the GOP convention have to have a vaccine pass. So I'm thinking right away, well, how many Republicans have a vaccine or took the vaccine? And how many of you guys actually took the vaccine already? And now you're asking for COVID passes, vaccine passes just to get into your convention. Like that's right. Where did that come from? Right? So clearly there was enough of them like that it was okay. So that to me tells me there's a lot more rhinos than we really think there are. And then even in that same Zoom meeting, they were talking about endorsing Democrats or left-leaning moderates instead of actual Republicans. So I'm like, no, we don't even have a GOP here, really. When it comes down to it, we've got to vote them out. We got to find them and then find out who the real ones are. I mean, for example, like Joe Collins, he's one of the biggest rhinos out there, but people still fall for him every year, every election. He keeps running. People keep falling for it.
He keeps getting endorsed. And from what I understand, you know, when he goes to run and when other rhinos go to run, it's not at their own, like, hey, I'm going to run for this office. It's the California GOP coming to them and saying, hey, we want you to run for this office.
Yep. Yeah. No, I've heard the exact same thing. I won't say who exactly. Right. But yeah, no, I've heard the same thing that people like him are just getting paid just to run, and it's not about winning. So to me, that tells me that the GOP has a deal with the Democrats here, to where maybe they just make it look like they're fighting, but they're really not. What do they call that in wrestling, kayfabe or whatever that is? It's just a fake fight to make it look like it's this intense thing, but really they're all on the same side. And we've even heard the Democrats admit that. That one woman from Florida, I don't remember her name, but she came out and said it. Project Veritas exposed her on a phone call where she was saying how, yeah, we need to get more Democrats running as Republicans. And, you know, the Democrats, they don't have to worry about that. That's the funny thing. They don't have to worry about rhinos on their, I don't even know what you would call that, a Democrat by name only kind of thing. There's no Republicans that do that, that's willing to even risk their integrity that way. Unfortunately for them, they're willing to do whatever they got to do to win, including lose their integrity. I mean, look at what Katie Hobbs is doing. She wouldn't even take questions from reporters. She's hiding in bathrooms. You know what I mean?
Not only that, she wouldn't even do, not only would she not debate Carrie Lake, but she wouldn't debate like her primary opponent. She just had no intentions of like doing any debates. And that's the one thing about, you know, we're talking about Carrie Lake a little bit. It's been Republicans not supporting her in the state, and in Maricopa County specifically, that has been, I think, the biggest obstacle that she's had to come across.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing, I mean, you don't hear very many Republicans talking at all about what's going on in Arizona right now. You know, I'm on Twitter looking for updates all the time. I don't see any Republicans coming out to speak up for Carrie Lake. I mean, as far as like senators, congressmen, or anything like that, I mean, maybe a few here and there, but nobody's like vocal making this a big ordeal when in fact she has a solid case. I mean, we're headed for day 2 of the trial, and day 1 was amazing.
Yeah, so Yeah.
So it's like even then though they don't want to come to her defense. Um, Maybe they don't want to be called election deniers either. I don't know what it is, but at this point they got to get in the game because if they don't, not only are we going to know who they were and remember them, they're not going to get voted, but they're going to put us in a worse situation down the line.
No, we got to weed them out. You know, at the end of the day, that's what we have to do. And it was after the presidential election. I was watching Dan Bongino, and I guess he was answering questions or something like that. He was like, people were saying, do we need to start this Patriot Party? And there was actually a lot of people talking about it. I think, well, design logos and stuff like that of a U.S. Patriot Party. And his whole thing was like, oh, no, it would take too much work. The Republicans have all this infrastructure. And at the end of the day, we just need to, you know, beef up the Republican Party and everything like this. I think about where we are right now. 2 years away, 2 years from that time, what if we had started another party at that point in time? Because it seems to me that the Republicans are pretty weak. So another party might be able to like completely like squash them all together. At this stage of the game, it's going to be, I mean, I just look at how hard like people like you and other people that I know who had just like pulled themselves up and said, hey, I'm going to go out in the streets. I'm going to start protesting. And we have folks like that are behind a new party. That we have the folks that are willing to go out and work just to build another country, not because it's going to put some money in their pocket or boost their job profile or something like that. They're doing it because they believe that the planet needs this, that our survival depends upon it, not even for their own lifetime, but the lifetimes after them. I just wonder, like, is because it just seems to me, especially not just our local elections here or even our national elections in California, but it's the way that the Republicans have treated Trump throughout the entire time that he's been running is clear to me that something has to change. Either we end the Republican Party or start a new one, or we've got to make it priority number one to clean house.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people ready for that too. Ready. I mean, as you mentioned the Patriot Party and start registering people, I think people will start flocking in droves to go sign up for that. But yeah, I mean, people have to find it within themselves as far as what's that line, what's going to be too much for them. And if they don't hold that line or if they don't raise the standard, then yeah, we are going to lose it all because like I said earlier, they're coming at us from all sides. And the moment any of us gives up, we're as strong as the weakest chain in the link. And that's where we're at right now. But yeah, I mean, as far as starting a new party, I'd be totally down for that. I mean, it would definitely weed out a lot of people because I think that's kind of what we're seeing now. And actually, with the whole de sanctimonious comment that happened a couple weeks ago, I think that's partially what Trump did a little bit. Is he's still weeding out the rhinos for us. I've got this whole thing about DeSantis, and we don't have to get into it now. I don't trust him myself, but what that comment did was, to me, expose who the rhinos really are. All the people that came out and spoke against Trump why would he say something like that? That's so childish and so unprofessional and all this and that. I'm like, you guys literally sound like the liberals of 2016. Like, you guys are actually, you were repeating Hillary Clinton's own words by calling him unpresidential. I'm like, you guys even hear yourselves right now. But maybe it's just because they're tired of the Trump hate. And I think that's a lot of it, actually. It's kind of like I said before, the red hat, the MAGA hat isn't for everybody. Not everybody can handle the hate that comes along with it. Some people are just tired of it, and they do want to go back to the old GOP establishment. They do want to go back to the little tick for tack kind of fighting between the Democrats and the GOP, and why are the Democrats doing this? There are people that want to go back to that just because of the peace that comes with it. I've had conversations with people like that. Oh, Trump is too divisive, and this and that. And at the end of the day, truth is divisive in its own nature, just by itself. Because there's going to be a side of people that believe it and a side that don't, even if the facts are right there in front of them. So people just got to get on board with that there's just going to be division, but it's not us causing it. We're just trying to uphold certain standards in a certain way of life. They're trying to take kids to drag shows. You know what I mean? So there's a whole line that's being crossed there. So yeah, like I said, people got to find what that line is for themselves at this point.
You know, I grew up conservative. I grew up in a conservative household, and my families are Christian conservatives, and some of them are evangelical Christians. And I can tell you, through college and everything like this, and through my life, you know, I working in the entertainment industry, I went to the left. I'm a 2-time Bernie Sanders supporter, and for me, in regards to Trump, I bought into the, you know, I drank the Kool-Aid, except for when he was running against Hillary Clinton. You know, one of the things I kept saying to myself was like, well, he's an outsider though. Let's see what an outsider can actually do. You know, that's right. Interesting to me. But the other thing is that I knew 100% was that the Democrat Party had stolen the election from Bernie Sanders twice. They did it twice, right in front of everybody's face, and they didn't care. And the establishment media they weren't just complicit. They were part of that steal. They facilitated it.
Yep.
And by not covering, Bernie Sanders would have these major rallies and different stadiums and things like that with bands of note and things, and they would not get any coverage at all. You would have to find them on the internet somewhere. CNN, MSNBC, all of them were all complicit in this whole business. So I saw this, and then I knew from the Clintons. I grew up during that era when Bill Clinton was president, so I knew what they were about. I knew about Hillary Clinton. I knew about the suicides, but beyond that, I know of all of the crooked business that they were up to, going back to when he was governor. So I had no love for Hillary Clinton at all. And the other thing is with the Democrats that I noticed was like, when I started speaking out against this, that, hey, we can't let like the Clinton, and people were like, blue, no matter who, shut your mouth, shut up, don't talk about this. And I was like, I don't live like that. You know, I don't allow people just to tell me because of this is the party or whatever. And it was just like, people kept saying at that time, even before he was president, oh, Trump's a racist. Trump is he's a Nazi. He's this, he's a bigot. He's this and that. And I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, that doesn't track though. I was like, that doesn't track like what I'm seeing. And then I did my tax returns looked at my tax returns from 2018 and 2019. And it was like some of the best years financially that I had in my life. And I was like, there's something to this, what's going on here. And some other things like took place. I was doing a documentary on this guy, Ed Buck, who's this murderer in West Hollywood that's tied with Adam Schiff. And one of the things that we found like during doing work on that was that the entire Democrat establishment was on this guy's payroll. Everybody from the local city council to West Hollywood, the mayor to LA County officials, the previous sheriff before Villanueva, going all the way up to Hillary Clinton. Everybody was on this guy's payroll. Even the previous DA, Jackie Lacey, was taking money off of him. So it was just like, I couldn't stomach anymore like what I was seeing in regards to the Democrats as far as like what they were doing. To me, it just exposed everything. And the thing about Trump is that when I started, when the whole thing was going on with Ed Buck, there was a woman who was an activist who was trying to say like, look, there's all these political connections and nobody wanted to hear about it. CNN wouldn't cover, MSNBC wouldn't cover. So she, who was a hardcore Democrat, went on Fox News. And of course they were like ready to hear like what she had to say. And I just started paying attention to other stories that Fox was covering. And I was just like, wow, they're covering an entire other side of the world that we're not even being told about. It was like, CNN had just become like the Trump hating channel, and that was it. Yeah. And when you see actually all of the things that he has said that have come to pass, it's like that have been revealed to us. It's just like, and the idea that this guy who doesn't have to would actually run again. I don't even know if I would run again. I'm thinking about it, you know, myself. It's just like, especially after they raided my house, I would be like, you know what, that's it. I'm done. You know,
Yeah. Okay.
that's it. We're talking about somebody could get killed now. So I'm not going to, I just wonder, maybe I would, maybe, but it's just like, that's a line where you have to make a decision. Am I going to continue to move forward with this? And I guess, and his whole thing is like, he's all in. So what else is he going to do? But right after the primary, I didn't understand it. These people on our side were talking about, oh, we have to get rid of Trump and everything like this. And people that wouldn't even have careers if they didn't, if Trump wasn't in office, Officer Tatum and some of these other guys that were like dogging on him. And it was just like, I was like, hold on a second though. I was like, where is this even coming from? And from what I could tell, it was coming from Mitch McConnell, but it was coming from the former Speaker of the House. It was coming from not Bonham, but the guy who replaced him.
Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan.
Yeah.
He was all of a sudden, this guy has been like in a closet somewhere for the last like 6 years or whatever. And now all of a sudden he's like going to come back and try to enter back into politics. And that he was talking about, and then it was like all of these people started, all of a sudden they just started repeating like these talking points. And I was just like, what are you even talking about? I was like, and of course the Bushes were on top of it, but we saw like what this is. I mean, they've hated Trump from the beginning, and it's not just because he made Jeb Bush look like a fool. It's because they're part of the deep state. And I just don't understand it. It's like, it's not just out of loyalty that we owe Trump. And it's just the fact that this is the guy with the plan. This is the guy that is willing to step up and take on the deep state. So I just don't understand it.
Yeah. And I might anger some people with this, but that's my big problem with DeSantis right now. Just the fact that, I know there's people saying, oh, he won't say that. He hasn't said that he's running. But I'm like, you don't have to necessarily say you're running to be running. All the different actions that he's doing lately, I think is setting himself up to run. Like, for example, this whole petition for an investigation into wrongdoing over the COVID-19, over the jab in Florida that he tried to petition for recently. Personally, I think he's going to use that in the primary debates against Trump. He's going to be like, hey, well, Trump started Operation Warp Speed, and I'm the one that came after him. He's going to try to, so he's doing little things like this now, where he's kind of positioning himself to be look better than Trump. And he's allowing the media to push that, which is the biggest thing. So, as far as people turning on Trump, he's probably like the worst of them. Because, even Trump said it himself, Trump had to send the FBI into Florida to stop the election from being stolen from DeSantis. So, had Trump not done that, DeSantis wouldn't be governor. Yeah, exactly. They would have lost to the fraud. So, off of that alone, he should just immediately be telling media, I'm not running for president. It's just focus on Trump. But he won't say that. He's yet to say that. So, somebody like him is like a perfect example of turning it back on Trump, in my opinion. And I'm still waiting for him to say something about not running for president. Instead, he's just allowing people to make rumors. He's allowing the party to be split. So, to me, the way I look at it is kind of like what you said. Trump is the outsider. He's the only one that's come out of this with a plan, somebody who doesn't have to do it. Ron DeSantis, he is a politician. He's just another run of the mill. As far back as 2013, he was signing letters urging America to stand with Ukraine, and helped push the coup for Zelensky to eventually take office. So, you look at things like that. I don't know. Like I said, he's just a perfect example of people turning their back on Trump at this point. But it all comes back to the Trump hate that people have. And there's a lot of people, I think, over the last 4 years, as far as leaving Trump for DeSantis, who didn't like Trump to begin with. They just tolerated Trump. And they were just waiting for the next bandwagon to jump onto. And they finally found one with DeSantis. And that's exposed a lot of people as far as who the rhinos are. Because, Trump wasn't just about making America great. I may sound like a conspiracy theorist for this, but he was about saving the children. That whole thing, everything was, Pizzagate and all of that. It's not just about saving America. There's a much deeper war going on that we're not even really focused on. We saw a little bit come out of it with Balenciaga, and that whole thing was all the satanic worshipers that came out of there. We seen a little glimpse of that.
Yeah, but that's just a tip, though. You know, that's just the tip. That's not even like it's such a small aspect of what actually is going on. That was one of the things about all those protests. It was like, this is good. We're bringing attention to it, but this is small potatoes.
We don't even know how dark the world really is. I can only imagine how dark the world really is. So, I mean, if you're willing to get in Trump's way of stopping that, then you're a rhino in my book. And, you know, someone who's going to run against him for president, it's like, what side are you on? Because are you not trying to save the children? Do you have a better plan to save the children? Do you have a better plan than Trump does to expose Hollywood, Pedowood, and the rest of the dark cabal? Because to my knowledge, Trump is the only one that's ever been trying to do that. And if DeSantis was going to do it, why didn't he do it back when he was a congressman? Why wasn't he pushing for any of that stuff? So, like, no, he's not about that, saving the world in a sense. He's just another career politician in my book. But yeah, Trump is about a lot more than just making America great again. There's a spiritual battle here, and I'm not necessarily saying Trump's a Christian or anything like that, but what he's brought to the table is a spiritual war to light. That's really what we're fighting here. And Trump is the only one I can see right now as a candidate that's willing to take that fight to them, not just this, physical war that we're in.
No, and that's the thing is, like, when, Pizzagate, I mean, I've known about pedophilia within the entertainment industry since the 90s, I guess. I've had knowledge of, like, what's going on. And I'm aware that for the last maybe 20, 25, almost 30 years now, there has always been in conspiracy circles this idea that the world was run by pedophiles. But under Trump, we found out about Epstein in a real way. And now that's not a conspiracy theory anymore. And we've only seen just a minute amount of the information. Obviously, we don't know, like, all the people that have come out, but if you pay attention to what's going on, you realize that there's a lot of people that are really uptight about all that. And that's the reason why they're really Bible thumpers for the Democrats and for Biden. That's why they'll go online and say he's a great president, even though it's clear he's an imbecile. So we're seeing all of that come to fruition in real time. So it's that, and then as far as I'm concerned, the one thing about Trump is that all the right people hate him. And I'm not just talking about the Democrats, I'm talking about the Republicans. It's all the right people that don't want him back.
Right. But they're all the same people that want DeSantis.
Right.
Right. But I mean, Trump is the outsider. He's the one that they can't control. He's too rich for them. I mean, I can't think, I've tried to think of ways where he might be controlled opposition, himself. But I'm like, what motive would he have? He literally had everything that a man could possibly want in his life before he started running for president. Why would he think to throw that all away for what? Unless he has some religious reason, but I don't think he's Satanist. I've never found anything on that. Connecting Trump to Satanism or anything like that. So, I mean, as far as all these other ones, I believe that a good majority of the politicians, meaning 78%, including Democrats and Republicans, are all in this game together. I mean, you see what's happened with FTX and Sam Bankman, FTX donating to the GOP party. Yep. So, I mean, it's like they're all in the game. And that's why they hate Trump, because he's the one that's calling them out for it. There's nobody like Trump in that sense. There's nobody.
No, and I think, I think everybody has the ability to redeem themselves. I hope that DeSantis is reading the tea leaves, so to speak, and is realizing that he's being led down a path that is the wrong way, and gets back on the Trump train and starts supporting him. But at the end of the day, as the saying goes, you can't stop what's coming. And so if he chooses that path, then so be it.
Exactly. It's was it Megan Kelly? I think she said it. The only winning move is to not play. I love that quote. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, I mean, he needs to read the room. The people that are going to vote for him at this point, it's hard to say, if they really believed in that that MAGA Make America Great movement, or if they were just jumping on it to jump on the bandwagon, make some money off of it. There's a lot of conservative influencers who definitely made a lot of money off of Trump, now turning their back on him. I mean, even Candace Owens made a comment about Trump. Yep. I was like, dude, you wouldn't even be nobody would know who you are if it wasn't for Trump. Trump literally gave a voice to people. I mean, back in 2016 when he started running, I remember thinking, yeah, he's not necessarily my first choice. I actually wanted Ben Carson to run because he was a Christian and all that. But even then, I just had this gut feeling that Trump was going to win just simply because he's the perfect salesman. He literally wrote the book on sales. Like, I don't care what a salesman sells. If he's good at it, he'll sell it.
Sell anything.
Right, exactly. And I'm like, none of these other candidates had any kind of sales background whatsoever. So I'm like, I already knew this guy was just going to crush everybody just on how clever he is. Yeah, with him, he gave people that voice where he started saying things that shocked the world. I mean, in 2016, I remember myself getting a little more bold to speak up and say things and calling things out the way they were, but because no one had ever spoken up like that. And that's coming off of a term where we had a president going around the country apologizing to all these different, going around the world apologizing to all these different countries for how bad America was. For like 8 years, Obama, apologizing to the Muslims for attacking them, the Islam and all that stuff. I'm like, so we needed somebody like that who was the complete opposite of, I'm not of America bowing to these other countries to, you guys are going to bow to us now. This is America. We're the shining city on the hill, not you guys. But yeah, I mean, if Trump didn't do that, even myself included, I wouldn't have any kind of platform at all. It's all because of Trump. He started that movement.
When 9/11 happened, I was already conspiratorially minded, I guess. I'd seen too many things that had happened prior to it. So when that whole event took place, I was like, there's something not right about this. And then, of course, immediately we were embroiled in, war on two fronts in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the whole case against Iraq seemed very loose. And the idea that George Bush was going back into Iraq after Desert Storm with his dad and Saddam making threats against him and all this other stuff. To me, it was just like the connections were fairly they were blatant. They were in your face. Yeah. Donald Trump is the only president that said that those two wars were wrong, that we had no business being over there. And I was like, he said that during the election. And I was like, wow. I was like, even the Democrats won't say that. Even the Democrats won't come out and say that. So it's like, for him to say that on the same stage with Jeb Bush, it was just like, wow, he's calling out the Republicans. I was like, we got to listen to him. I was like, because he's not playing sides over here. He's telling the truth. He's on the side of truth and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just can't argue with that, and, he was dropping the hard truths, the ones that no one wanted to talk about, no one was willing to talk about, and no one wanted to hear really. And I guess that's why I still respect him. What would you say as we close down here? What would you say to people? I mean, you put it all on the line. I think when I'm speaking for myself, and not having a lot of time doing it, but when you go out into the street with the bullhorn or just with the sign or whatever, you put yourself on the corner and you start raising your voice. And I remember the first time I did it, I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, here we are. We're the crazy guy on the corner shouting, we're the one that when you drive by in your car, the crazy guy. And it was just like, what else are you going to do at the end of the day? Because this is where we are. If you don't, where I kind of felt like, the reason why I did it and the reason why I still do is because I feel like we don't really have much of a choice now. the avenues we've had to have discourse have been dissolved. So it's come to the point now where we have to get out in public, start shouting. What would you say to somebody right now that's angry, they're irritated, they're unhappy, they know they should do something, but they're scared to?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing, I mean, this might be a little bit of a side issue, but the first thing is I'm a Christian. So, I mean, the Bible says that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is the beginning of insight. So, I mean, it all starts with having really the start of a spiritual. You got to understand there is a dark and a good side. There's an evil and a light side. And if there's Satanists out there, then there must mean that there's a God. So at some point, you've got to come to that conclusion of what side am I on? So I think that's step number one. And then from there, I think you'll be emboldened to take on the next step, because going out there for any kind of cause, I mean, unless you have that real spiritual connection to it or that passion to it or whatever it is, you just kind of fall to the side. You know, when the next Mar-a-Lago raid happens, you're just going to cave like all the rest of them. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think it does start with having a spiritual walk there, and being able to know that at the end of the day, God is in control out of all of this. God's not running for God. He's sitting on the throne every single day. And he's looking down at all of us laughing. You know, he's in control of everything. So that, for me, having that assurance, knowing that, you know, if Trump doesn't win in 2024, it doesn't matter, because I know God is still in control, and whatever the Democrats do, they're going to do. But just having that knowledge and that confidence that God's in control and that we're going to win at the end of the day, whether it's in this life or the next, we are going to win. That gives me the confidence to go out there and do what I got to do. So yeah, just having faith in God. And then the second thing is just acknowledging our history. I mean, I grew up on watching American history movies like The Alamo, for example, or The Patriot even. And you just look back at our history, and we're born from a line of fighters. You know, we just don't take no from nobody, regardless of what the odds are. It doesn't even matter what the odds are. Even if we know we're going to lose, that doesn't matter. That's just not in our nature. That's not what Americans do. We get out there and fight to the very last man. So, I mean, at the end of the day, know your history, know where you came from, and honor the people that came before you to fight for this, to achieve this victory against this evil that we're facing now. It's not just us. We were born for a time as this. It's kind of all led up to this point, if that makes sense. We're all here for a reason. If you're listening to this message, you're definitely here for a reason. You didn't just stumble onto this by accident, you know? So stand up for what you believe in. Stand up for our history, our heritage, and what being American is all about.
Excellent, Yoshi. What do people do if they want to find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter mainly. My Instagram handle is Yoshi the Patriot 1776. And then on Twitter, you can find me at just Yoshi the Patriot. The handle is Rhino Hunter, because I have to spell it, RINOHUNTAH 1776.
What they won't tell you, we will. Come and take it